How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel. About a year and a quarter ago, I went to my first ever track day, and it was quite a daunting but incredibly fun experience. And now that I'm kind of reaching the end of my beginner phase as a track day goer, I wanted to give you guys my advice on what you should do if you are starting going to track days, if you're a beginner, or if you're just someone who wants to get into driving cars on track. So these are my 10 tips for anyone who is in the same position that I was in about a year ago, starting to get into track days and track driving. Let me know in the comments down below if there's any advice that I've missed or that you'd also give to beginners at track days. I'd really appreciate it. I'm sure they would too. Remember to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe as well if you're new. Without further ado, let's get into the video. So number one is how to book a track day here in the UK. I get this question asked quite a lot, particularly by you guys on my Instagram, coming over into my DMs and saying, how do I actually get started in track day driving? The way that I do it is I go onto trackdays.co.uk. I'm not sponsored by them, by the way. It's just the easiest place for me to find all the different track days that are available, have a look at what's on there, and then I recommend that you guys book as early as possible because as you can see here, these get full up really quickly. This site basically brings together a whole bunch of track days from different providers around the country, not all of them, but the vast majority of the major ones. You can find track days outside of this. For example, I went to that one last year, the Santa Sleigh Ride, where I was driving my MX-5 around on a rally stage. That was not through this website, but that has come as a result of being in and around circles of other people that do track days. The second point I wanted to mention is that you should choose a track that will provide the most fun for your car. If you are driving a really fast car, then yeah, maybe it might be worth going to somewhere like Silverstone or Brands Hatch, but if you're driving something that's slow and maybe good at corners instead, it might be worth looking at somewhere else, maybe like Cadwell Park. Some tracks draw much faster cars with more professional drivers behind the wheels, so if you're worried about that, I recommend looking at Bedford Autodrome, Knockhill and Castle Combe, as these tracks tend to be pretty good for beginners. I can promise it would not have been fun for me to turn up at Silverstone in my stock MX-5 a year and a bit ago and then just get absolutely ruined on track by a bunch of supercars or by a bunch of actual track specialists in actual track cars. I'd have ended up spending my whole time looking in my mirrors and not looking forwards and actually just enjoying the experience. And that leads me on to my third point, which is don't blow your budget on the track. Silverstone, as an example, can be very expensive, well over £550 for a track day, and I've seen Goodwood days at £700. You will likely have as much fun at many other tracks which will cost you way less than £250, sometimes even less than £150, particularly as a beginner. And there are better things to be spending your money on for your first ever track days, I promise. The £400 difference between a Mallory Park and Silverstone day is a good set of track tyres, for example. Which leads me very nicely on to my fourth point, which is the two things you really should invest in for your car, particularly if you've got an older or less capable car, are a good set of tyres and some brake pads if you can't upgrade your brakes fully. A lot of people want to make their cars go faster in a straight line or quicker out of corners or all that other kind of stuff. Ultimately, the two things that matter most on track are how much grip you have and how well you can stop your car. It's pretty simple. If you've got more grip, you can take corners faster, and if you can brake harder, you can brake later. And in terms of lap times, corner speed and late braking are ultimately key factors. Not only that, by having better tyres, you actually end up feeling a lot more confident in your car, and ultimately it helps you to be faster and make your sessions longer as well, because when you run normal road tyres, your tyres overheat and end up not being able to do the distance in longer sessions. It's a similar story with road brake pads, which will get hot and start to fade and become pretty useless and end up making you brake a lot earlier for corners than you would have wanted to. You will have a better time with track focused pads. I personally run the yellow stuffs at the moment, but I'm going to be swapping them out soon for an entirely new big brake kit. And in terms of tyres, I currently run Nankang NS2Rs, which are cheap but also a very good and grippy set, which seem to operate well in the two different cars that I've driven on track with them on. In terms of saving money as well, for your first time out on track, just rent equipment unless you already own it. I spent like £1,000 on pretty clothes like helmet, gloves, the racing suit, boots, etc. And yes, it felt really cool, but in the long run it was utterly pretty useless when I could have spent that money on other stuff that would have actually made me and the car faster. If you really want to spend your money on your outfit, I recommend a helmet and boots. Those are the two things that I think are particularly important for track driving. Helmet, because at every track day you will have to wear a helmet pretty much, and so you might as well get one, and you can also use it for like stuff like go-karting and that kind of stuff too. And boots, because it's great to get some good feel in your feet, because ultimately everything that you do in terms of making the car move forwards or stop is probably in your feet. it. Much nicer than driving in some Air Force Ones or something like that. But my 6th tip is something that you definitely should spend your money on, which is coaching. At my first ever track day, my lap times and understanding of how to go fast around a track generally massively improved with a short 20-minute coaching session. I would recommend a coach to pretty much anyone who goes to track days, whether they are seasoned veterans or newbies, because it's honestly always good to have a second opinion on how you can go faster. There is absolutely no shame in learning. In fact, it's pretty much what you're at a track day to do. So just make sure you listen to the person coaching you, and 99 times out of 100 they'll probably be right. Or they will at least give you something to think about in terms of how you could potentially go faster. Trust me, from experience, the difference a tutor can make is unreal. Tip number 7 is a nice and easy one, but also one that people tend to forget, or it has to be reiterated in track briefings before you go out. Don't put your handbrake on after your session, particularly after a long session with lots of hard braking, as it can lock on and just be a pain. Instead of putting the handbrake on, just put the car into gear to stop it rolling away. Honestly, this is a mistake I've seen made by track veterans as well as people that are brand new to going out on track days. Now, number 8 comes from a very bad experience, which is that you should always check the decibel limits of the track day that you're going to, and check the decibels of your car before you actually book the event. I found this out the hard way after supercharging my MX-5. It had gone from being around about 88 to 89 decibels to around about 90 to 91 decibels, and the track day that I was going to, it was an 89 decibel limit. It passed the standing test, but it didn't pass the test on track. So on my first session, I got a black flag, was called into the pits, and they explained to me that my car was over the limit, and if it was over the limit again, I would be sent home. The advice was to literally just drive slowly past where the measurement tools were, so I started doing that, and that kind of just compromises the lap and just makes everything way less fun. And anyway, despite my best efforts, I still set off the tools again and ultimately ended up getting the car sent home for the day. And if it wasn't for someone else very kindly offering me their car to drive instead, I would have literally done about 5 laps on track for about £250. There is an app that I've seen a lot of people swear by called Decibel X on iPhones. I don't know if there's something similar for Android as well. I haven't used it personally, but it might be worth going out and getting an indicative view of how loud your car is, both moving and at standstill. This will stop you ending up like me, and trust me, you don't want to be me driving home early from a track day. My 9th hint is a pretty basic one, but I suggest that you bring spares of basic stuff if possible, like oil and coolant, and over time start to graduate to bringing other stuff instead if possible, like wheels with track tires on specifically, so you don't have to use them as your road tires. Also, if you're handy and useful at this kind of stuff, it's worth obviously bringing tools. You'd be surprised at how many people turn up to track days with literally none of this stuff, no spares, no tools, none of that kind of stuff. Then something goes wrong and they are screwed. And one thing I also recommend is to bring petrol, as many tracks have petrol on site, but it's normally mad expensive compared to your average garage. And my final hint is to remember that you're there to have fun, not to become the next F1 world champion. Watch out for other people who are also trying to enjoy their days. Do your best to focus forwards and let other people overtake you where necessary. If you've ever been skiing, it's the same basic principle. Just follow the rules about where you should be on track when you're expecting to be overtaken, but focus forwards and don't try and second guess where you think someone else is going to go, as that's what ultimately ends up causing crashes. And when there are faster people than you, don't get disheartened because they're quicker than you. Use them as motivation and remind yourself that you're the only one there that you can compare yourself to, as you're the only one driving that car specifically. Obviously, keep yourself safe by following all the rules and stay humble about your abilities and focus on getting faster, and you'll have a bunch more fun than if you go there and think that you are sick. And with those 10 tips, you should be part of the way to having a successful first track day. I hope this video was useful for some of you, particularly those of you who are starting to get back into track days for this year, or anyone who's brand new to it in general. I wanted to get this video out at this time of the year because track days are absolutely flying out of the door. So if you want to get to one before the end of this summer, it's worth getting it booked in sooner. If you enjoyed the video or learned something new, I'd appreciate a hit of the like button, subscribe as well if you're new. Massive thanks to the patrons as always for their continued support, and to you guys as well for watching. I will see you in the next one.
Listen.